The security alarm screamed through the Galactic Academy's hallways at exactly 0947 hours. In Classroom 7, 43 students from 12 different species froze as the reinforced doors locked with a metallic clang. Professor Velrix, a Quillen with silver fur and 6 eyes, dropped the datapad he was holding. His voice cracked when he spoke. Code Crimson. Everyone behind the desks. Now. The students scrambled. Desks scraped against floors. Chitinous legs clicked. Tentacles wrapped around chair legs. In the back row, near the observation windows overlooking the training grounds, sat Kyle Murphy. The human exchange student didn't move. He sat perfectly still, his chair tilted back against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. A Vexian student named Zorith slithered past him, her scales rattling with fear. Human Kyle, you must hide. Code Crimson means a Kravoth hunter is loose in the facility. Kyle's lips curved into a smile. Then he laughed. It wasn't a nervous giggle or a stress response his alien classmates might understand. It was a genuine, amused laugh that echoed in the suddenly quiet room. Professor Velrix's 6 eyes locked onto Kyle. Mr. Murphy, this is not appropriate. A Kravoth is the most dangerous predator in known space. It has killed 7 security officers already. Kyle stood up slowly. He was tall for a human, just over 6 feet, with the lean build of someone who grew up in Earth's full gravity. His dark hair was messy, and he wore the standard academy jumpsuit like everyone else. Nothing about him looked particularly threatening, nothing except his eyes, which held something the other students had never quite understood during his 3 months at the academy. Professor, Kyle said, his voice calm and steady. With respect, you've never seen what humans do when something threatens their pack. The door to the classroom buckled. Metal groaned. Something massive hit it from the outside. The Quillen professor backed away, his fur standing on end. Every student in the room huddled behind overturned desks, except Kyle. He walked to the front of the classroom, past the terrified professor, past students who stared at him with confusion and horror. Mr. Murphy, get back here immediately, Velrix hissed. The door buckled again. This time, 3 deep gashes appeared in the reinforced metal. Whatever was outside was strong enough to tear through materials designed to withstand explosive decompression. Kyle picked up a metal chair. He tested its weight, then nodded to himself. You know what the funny thing is, Professor? Everyone in the galaxy knows Earth is a death world. They know our gravity is crushing. They know our atmosphere is corrosive. They know our wildlife would terrify most species. The door shuddered. More gashes appeared. But nobody. Kyle continued, his voice taking on an edge. Nobody really understands what that means. What it does to a species. How it shapes us. A final impact. The door flew inward, torn completely off its hinges. It crashed against the far wall with a deafening boom. In the doorway stood something out of nightmares. The Kravoth hunter was 9 feet tall, covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light. Its head was reptilian but wrong, with too many teeth and a mouth that split its face nearly in half. 4 arms ending in curved claws, each as long as a human forearm. Red eyes that glowed with predatory intelligence. It had killed 7 trained security officers. It was an apex predator from a high-gravity world. It was death incarnate to most species in the galaxy. It stepped into the classroom, and its massive head swiveled, scanning for prey. 42 students cowered behind desks. 42 hearts beat in terror. But Kyle Murphy stood in the center of the room, chair in hand, and he smiled wider. The Kravoth focused on him. It made a sound, a deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the floor. A sound that said it had found its next victim. Kyle's smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew. Come on then, he said quietly. Let's see how you do against something that evolved to hunt everything else on its planet. The Kravoth charged. The massive predator moved with shocking speed for something its size. Its 4 clawed arms spread wide as it crossed the classroom in 3 bounding strides. Most species would have been frozen by fear, their nervous systems overwhelmed by the presence of such a dominant predator. Kyle threw the chair, not at the Krevoth's head or body. At its leading leg, right at the joint. The metal chair tangled with the creature's limb, mid-stride. The Krevoth stumbled, its momentum carrying it forward, but its balance suddenly wrong. It crashed into a row of desks, scattering them like toys. Kyle was already moving. He didn't run away. He ran sideways, toward the laboratory equipment cabinets along the wall. His hands grabbed a canister of liquid nitrogen used for demonstrations. The Krevoth recovered faster than any Earth animal would have. It roared, a sound that made the windows vibrate, and swung a clawed arm in a wide arc that would have disemboweled anything in its path. Kyle dropped flat. The claws passed inches above his head with a whistling sound. He rolled, came up on his feet, and triggered the nitrogen canister directly into the creature's face. The Krevoth screamed. Frost formed instantly on its scales. It reared back, momentarily blinded, all 4 arms clawing at its eyes. Kyle didn't celebrate. He didn't pause. He moved to the next cabinet and grabbed a plasma cutter used for metallurgy classes. The tool wasn't a weapon. It was designed for precision work on metal samples. But in Kyle's hands, held like a knife, it became something else entirely. "You want to know why humans laugh at danger, Professor?" Kyle called out, his voice steady despite the adrenaline that must have been flooding his system. "Because on Earth, everything wanted to kill us. The animals, the weather, the plants, the bacteria. We didn't have claws or venom or armor. We just had this." He tapped his temple with his free hand, never taking his eyes off the recovering Krevoth. "We got smart. We got mean, and we learned that the best defense is making the other thing wish it never started the fight." The Krevoth's vision cleared. Ice still clung to its scales, but its red eyes burned with rage now. It had been hurt, humiliated. This small creature had wounded it. The predator's pride was as dangerous as its claws. It didn't charge this time. It stalked forward, more cautiously, all 4 arms ready to strike from different angles. It had learned Kyle was dangerous. It was adapting. Kyle backed up slowly, keeping the plasma cutter between them. His eyes tracked every movement. "That's right," he said softly. "You're learning. Good. That means you're smart enough to understand what's about to happen." The Krevoth lunged, but it was a feint. 3 of its arms stabbed forward, while the 4th swept in from the side. A killing pattern that had served it well against trained soldiers. Kyle didn't try to dodge everything. He couldn't. Instead, he moved into the attack, inside the reach of the longer arms. The sweeping claw caught his shoulder, tearing through the jumpsuit and drawing blood. Pain flared white-hot. But Kyle's response was immediate and brutal. He activated the plasma cutter and dragged it across the Krevoth's exposed belly as he passed beneath its guard. The creature's scales were tough, designed to withstand most weapons. But plasma burned at temperatures that could cut starship hulls. The cutter carved a glowing line through the armor, and the Krevoth's scream this time was different. It was pain and shock, and the beginning of fear. Kyle rolled away, clutching his injured shoulder. Blood seeped between his fingers, red and bright against the gray floor. His face was pale, but his expression remained focused. Determined, almost cheerful. "You're tougher than a grizzly bear," he said, breathing hard. "But not by much." Professor Velrix had pressed himself against the back wall, his 6 eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "A human cannot fight a Krevoth. The strength difference alone is 5 to 1. The combat matrix shows 99.8% fatality rate for humans facing Krevoth in close quarters." Zorith, the Vexian student, had her communication device out. "Security is 3 minutes away. Human Kyle just needs to survive 3 more minutes." But Kyle wasn't trying to survive. He was hunting. The Cravath had backed away, one arm pressed against its wounded belly. Green blood seeped through its claws. Its red eyes tracked Kyle with new understanding. This wasn't prey. This was something else. Something that fought back in ways that didn't make sense. Kyle picked up a broken piece of desk, synthetic composite, sharp where it had snapped. You know what humans learned really early, big guy? We learned that size doesn't matter. The biggest, strongest animal isn't always the one that survives. The clever one survives. The one willing to do whatever it takes. He hefted the makeshift spear. His shoulder screamed in protest, but his hands remained steady. The one that refuses to quit. The Cravath made its decision. It turned and ran for the door. Not out of cowardice, but tactics. It was injured. This small creature was too dangerous to fight in its current state. Retreat, heal, return stronger. But Kyle had read its body language. Had seen the shift in its stance half a second before it moved. As the creature turned, Kyle threw the composite shard like a javelin. His father had taught him to throw on a baseball diamond back in Ohio. He'd spent years on the farm throwing hay bales, fixing fences, doing the kind of hard physical labor that built functional strength. The shard flew true. It struck the Cravath's rear leg. Not the joint this time, but the thick muscle of the thigh. The creature stumbled again, crashing against the doorframe. And Kyle was there, moving faster than he had any right to with a torn shoulder. The plasma cutter raised high. Here's the thing about humans, he said. And his voice was cold now, empty of humor. We don't just survive. We win. The plasma cutter came down on the Cravath's spine where the neck met the shoulders. The tool wasn't designed for this kind of work. But Kyle had seen the anatomy diagrams in xenobiology class, had paid attention when Professor Velrix explained vulnerable points in various species. The Cravath convulsed once, twice, then went still. Its red eyes dimmed, its breathing slowed and stopped. Kyle stepped back. The plasma cutter fell from his hand, clattering on the floor. His shoulder was on fire. And now that the immediate threat was gone, shock was starting to set in. His hands shook. His legs felt weak. He turned to face the classroom. 42 students stared at him in absolute silence. Professor Velrix's mouth hung open. All 6 eyes fixed on the human who had just done the impossible. Is everyone okay? Kyle asked. His voice came out rougher than he intended. Nobody answered. They just stared. Then security burst through the door. 6 officers in full combat armor, weapons raised, ready to face the Cravath threat. They stopped short when they saw the massive creature lying dead in the doorway and the bleeding human standing over it. The lead officer, a Torvin with blue exoskeleton, lowered his weapon slowly. What happened here? Kyle swayed on his feet. The adrenaline was wearing off fast. Nothing much, he said. Just a classroom incident. You know how it is. He took one step toward his desk. Then his legs gave out. He would have fallen if Zorith hadn't caught him. Her serpentine body surprisingly strong. Human Kyle, she hissed softly. You are insane. Kyle managed a weak laugh as the security team rushed to help. Yeah, he agreed. We get that a lot. As the medical team arrived and began treating his wounds, as students slowly emerged from behind desks, as Professor Velrix tried to explain to security what had happened, one thought echoed through every alien mind in that room. The humans were from a death world. Everyone knew that. But knowing it and understanding it were 2 very different things. They had just learned the difference. And throughout the Galactic Academy, as word of the incident spread, a new understanding began to take root. The humans laughed at danger not because they were foolish or unaware. They laughed because they had already survived worse, much worse, and they had learned that fear was just another obstacle to overcome. The medical bay of the Galactic Academy hummed with quiet efficiency as Kyle sat on an examination table. A Quillan medic named Petra worked on his shoulder with practiced ease, using a regenerative field to close the gash. The treatment would leave a scar, but the arm would heal completely within a week. You are remarkably calm for someone who was just mauled by a Krivoth, Petra observed. Her silver fur was pristine, and her 6 eyes watched Kyle with clinical interest. Your heart rate is already returning to normal baseline. Most species would remain in shock for hours. Kyle shrugged his good shoulder. It's not the first time I've been hurt. Clearly. Petra manipulated the field generator, and Kyle felt a warm tingling as tissue knit itself back together. I have reviewed your medical file, human Kyle. You have sustained 17 significant injuries in your 23 years. Broken bones, lacerations, burns, concussion. How did you survive childhood on Earth? Carefully, Kyle said with a slight smile. And not always successfully, obviously. The door to the medical bay slid open. Director Hammond walked in, followed by Professor Velrix and 2 security officers. Hammond was one of only 3 humans at the Academy, a stern woman in her 50s who served as the liaison between Earth and the Galactic Educational Consortium. Mr. Murphy, she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Kyle met her gaze steadily. Stopped a Krivoth from killing my classmates? You engaged a Class 5 predator in single combat with improvised weapons. Hammond pulled up a holographic display from her wrist unit. 7 trained security officers died fighting this creature. 7. They had military-grade weapons and armor. You had a chair and laboratory equipment. And plasma cutter, Kyle added helpfully. That was the key, really. Hammond's jaw tightened. Professor Velrix stepped forward, his fur still standing on end from stress. Director, I must file a formal report. Human Kyle's actions, while successful, violated 17 Academy safety protocols. He should have remained in cover and waited for security. He should have died, one of the security officers interrupted. The Torvin named Krell, who had led the response team. By every combat simulation, every tactical analysis, every bit of data we have, human Kyle should be dead. The Krivoth had every advantage. Kyle flexed his healing shoulder carefully. Everyone turned to look at him. It wasn't desperate enough, Kyle explained. It was hunting. I was fighting for my life, and the lives of 42 other people. That changes things. Director Hammond studied him for a long moment. You're not wrong. But that doesn't make what you did any less reckless. Would you have preferred I let it kill everyone? Kyle asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Petra finished with the regenerative field and stepped back. Her medical assessment complete. Hammond dismissed the security officers and Professor Velrix with a gesture, waiting until the medical bay door closed behind them before speaking again. No, she admitted. I wouldn't have preferred that. But Kyle, you need to understand something. You're not just a student here. You're a representative of humanity. Every action you take reflects on Earth. And what you did today is going to cause waves. I defended myself and others from a threat. How is that controversial? Because it shouldn't have been possible. Hammond pulled up more data on her display. I've already received 17 communications from various galactic news networks. The footage from the classroom security cameras is spreading through every channel. Do you know what they're calling you? Kyle shook his head. The Deathworlder who laughed. The human who hunted the hunter. The killer from the killer world. Hammond sighed and rubbed her temples. You're becoming famous, Kyle, and not everyone is happy about it. I just did what anyone would do. No, Petra interjected softly. You did what a human would do. There is a significant difference. As you demonstrated, over the next 3 days, Kyle discovered just how right they were. The incident spread through the academy like wildfire. Students who had never spoken to him before now watched him pass in the hallways with expressions ranging from awe to fear. Some kept their distance. Others tried to approach, wanting to hear the story firsthand. On the second day, a Vexian combat instructor named Suroth approached Kyle in the cafeteria. Suroth was tall for his species, nearly 7 feet, with scales that shifted between green and gold depending on the light. He was known for being tough, demanding, and utterly professional. Human Kyle, Suroth said, settling his serpentine bulk onto the reinforced bench across from Kyle. I wish to speak with you about your encounter with the Krevoth. Kyle looked up from his meal. Nutrient paste, designed for human dietary needs. It tasted like cardboard, but it kept him healthy. What about it? I have studied the security footage extensively, frame by frame. I have analyzed every movement, every decision you made. Suroth's eyes were intense. You made 37 tactical choices during the engagement. 34 of them were correct. What about the other 3? You survived them through luck and superior reflexes. Suroth leaned forward. But here is what interests me. You were not trained in Krevoth combat. You had no formal military experience, yet your tactical choices were sound. How? Kyle considered the question. I grew up on a farm in Ohio. We had problems with predators sometimes, coyotes, occasionally a bear. My dad taught me that you don't fight an animal the way it wants to fight. You use your advantages. Make them fight your way. Your father was a warrior? My father was a farmer, but he understood survival. Suroth nodded slowly. I would like to request something unusual. I want you to demonstrate your fighting style for my advanced combat class. Many of my students are from low-gravity worlds. They struggle with aggression training. They cannot conceptualize the mindset required for survival combat. Kyle hesitated. I'm not sure I'm the right person for that. You defeated a Krevoth with improvised weapons while injured. You are precisely the right person. Suroth stood. Think about it. The class meets tomorrow at 1,400 hours in Training Hall 7. On the third day, Kyle received a communication from an unexpected source. Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet wanted to speak with him via quantum link. Kyle took the call in a private communications booth, wondering what an admiral wanted with a student. Admiral Chen's face appeared in holographic form. She was in her 60s, with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in command. Mr. Murphy, I've been reading reports about your incident. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to be direct. The Galactic Council is concerned. Not about you specifically, but about what you represent. They're realizing that humanity might be more dangerous than they initially assessed. Kyle frowned. I defended myself and others. That makes us dangerous? From their perspective? Yes. Chen folded her hands. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds with stable climates, abundant resources, and limited predation. They developed intelligence to cooperate, to share, to build. Humans developed intelligence to survive, to hunt, to fight. That makes us fundamentally different in ways that worry them. So what happens now? Now we prove we can be trusted despite our nature. That's why I'm offering you something. Chen pulled up a file. Early admission to Earth Defense Academy. Full scholarship. Accelerated officer track. Your performance demonstrated exactly the kind of thinking we need. Kyle's eyes widened. Earth Defense Academy was the most prestigious military school in human space. Getting in required years of preparation, perfect scores, and recommendations from high-ranking officers. I'm honored, ma'am, but I'm here on an exchange program. I have 18 months left. We can arrange a transfer. The decision is yours, but the offer stands. Chen studied him through the hologram. You have potential, Murphy. Raw talent that needs refinement. Think about it. After the call ended, Kyle sat in the booth for a long time, thinking. 3 days ago, he had been an anonymous exchange student. Now he was famous, controversial, and being recruited by Earth's military, all because he had laughed at danger and refused to be prey. That evening, he found himself in the Academy's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. The station orbited a gas giant in the Kepler system, and the view was spectacular. Bands of color swirled across the planet's face, while 3 moons traced paths through space. Human Kyle. He turned to find Zorith approaching. the Vexian student who had caught him when he collapsed. She moved with the fluid grace of her species, scales whispering softly. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly, "for what you did, for protecting us. Anyone would have." "No." She shook her head. "I have thought about this constantly since it happened. I was terrified, frozen. I could not move, could not think. 42 students in that room, and only you acted. Only you fought back." Kyle looked back at the stars. "I was terrified too. I just didn't let it stop me. That is what makes you different. What makes humans different." Zorith settled next to him, her lower body coiled comfortably. "My people have a saying. The bravest warrior is the one who fights despite fear, not the one who feels no fear." "Your people have warriors?" "We did. Long ago. Before we joined the Galactic Consortium. Now we have security forces, police, military for defense against external threats. But true warriors? Those who fight not for duty but for survival?" She gestured at Kyle. "We have forgotten what that means. You reminded us." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the gas giant turn. Finally, Zorith spoke again. "What will you do?" "I heard about Admiral Chen's offer. I don't know. Part of me wants to stay here. Finish the exchange program. Prove that humans can integrate peacefully. Another part thinks, maybe I could do more good training others, helping humanity prepare for whatever comes next. There is a third option," Zorith suggested. "You could do both. Finish your time here. Learn everything you can about other species, their cultures, their ways of thinking. Then, join Earth defense with that knowledge. Become a bridge between humans and the galaxy." Kyle considered that. "That's actually not a bad idea. I am studying diplomatic relations. Strategy is part of my coursework." Zorith's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. "Though I admit, your approach to problem-solving is more direct than what we typically study." Kyle laughed. "Fair point." The observation lounge door opened, and Instructor Suroth entered. "Human Kyle. I hoped I would find you here. Instructor, have you considered my request? Will you demonstrate for my combat class tomorrow?" 2. Kyle glanced at Zorith, then back at Suroth. "I want it made clear that what I did wasn't about being human specifically. It was about refusing to give up, using available resources, and fighting smart instead of strong. Those are lessons anyone can learn." Suroth's scales shifted to a pleased gold. "Agreed. Your perspective is precisely what my students need. 1,400 hours. Training, Hall 7. After Suroth left, Zorith looked at Kyle with curiosity. "Maybe not exactly what I did, but everyone has their own strengths, their own advantages. The key is recognizing them and using them when it matters." Kyle stood, his shoulder only a faint ache now. "I should get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be interesting." As he walked back to his quarters, Kyle reflected on how much had changed in 3 days. He had come to the Galactic Academy to learn about other species, to understand the broader galaxy. Instead, he had taught them something about humanity, about Deathworlders, about what it meant to survive against the odds. The question now was what came next. The galaxy was watching. Earth was watching. And Kyle Murphy, a farm kid from Ohio, was at the center of it all because he had done what humans do best. He had laughed at danger, and then he had made it regret finding him. Training Hall 7 was larger than Kyle expected. The space could accommodate 300 students, with observation galleries on multiple levels. When Kyle arrived at 1,345 hours, students were already filtering in. Not just Instructor Suroth's advanced combat class, but others who had heard about the demonstration. Kyle wore standard academy training gear, loose gray pants, and a fitted shirt designed to allow full range of motion. His shoulder was healed enough to move properly, though medic Petra had warned him against anything too strenuous. Suroth met him at the entrance. There has been considerable interest in your demonstration. I hope you are prepared for an audience. Kyle looked up at the galleries. Easily 200 students already, with more arriving. I've never performed for a crowd before. Then consider it additional training. Combat often occurs with witnesses. Learning to maintain focus despite distractions is valuable. Suroth gestured toward the training floor. Come, let me introduce you to the volunteers. 4 students stood on the padded floor. Kyle recognized 2 of them from his xenobiology class, a Quillan named Dex, a Torvin named Jira, a human named Katie Bennett, from the Europa colony, and surprisingly, Zorith. You volunteered? Kyle asked the Vexian. Her scales rippled with nervous energy. You said anyone could learn these principles. I wish to prove you right. Suroth addressed the growing crowd. Students of the Galactic Academy. 3 days ago, exchange student Kyle Murphy engaged a Kreveth predator in single combat, using improvised weapons. He survived an encounter that killed 7 trained security officers. Today, he will demonstrate the principles that allowed him to succeed. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Kyle caught phrases in various languages. Deathworlder. Reckless. Impossible. Lucky. Suroth continued. More importantly, he will demonstrate that these principles can be learned by anyone willing to adapt their thinking. Human Katie, please step forward. Katie approached. She was shorter than Kyle, maybe 5'6", with the stocky build common among people who grew up in lower gravity. Hey, she said quietly. I'm supposed to attack you? That seems weird. It's a demonstration, Kyle assured her. We're both going to be fine. Just come at me like you mean it, Suroth explained to the audience. Both humans are from Deathworlds, but their physical capabilities differ significantly due to their upbringing environments. Human Katie grew up in 0.38 Earth gravity. Human Kyle grew up in full Earth gravity. This gives Kyle approximately 60% greater muscle density and bone strength. Katie rolled her shoulders, loosening up. Physically, yes, Suroth confirmed. But human Kyle's first principle is that physical strength is only one factor in combat. Human Katie. Attack him now. Katie moved fast. Her training was evident in the smooth way she closed distance and threw a punch aimed at Kyle's midsection. Kyle didn't block or dodge. Instead, he shifted his weight, redirected her momentum, and used her own force to take her off balance. She stumbled, but recovered quickly. Good, Kyle said. Again, but this time, I'm going to show everyone what I'm seeing. They reset. Katie attacked again. Same movement. This time, Kyle narrated as he responded. She's faster than me, because she trained in lower gravity. Her reflexes adapted to that environment, so I don't try to outspeed her. I watch her body position. See how her shoulder dips slightly before the punch? That tells me what's coming. He redirected again, but slower this time so the audience could follow. I use her momentum against her. Physics doesn't care about species or strength. Mass times velocity equals force. I just redirect that force somewhere safer. Over the next hour, Kyle worked through scenarios with each volunteer. With Dex the Quillan, he demonstrated how to use environmental awareness. Dex has 6 eyes with nearly 360-degree vision. That's an advantage I'll never have. But in combat, sometimes you can create blind spots with positioning and sudden movement. With Jira the Torvin, he showed how to exploit unexpected tactics. Everyone expects a Torvin to rely on their natural armor and strength. That means they anticipate certain attacks. What if Jira does something completely different? Jira hesitated, then suddenly dropped low and swept at Kyle's legs. Kyle went down but rolled and came up smoothly. Perfect. She surprised me because she didn't fight like her species typically fights. Unpredictability is a weapon. With Zorith, Kyle demonstrated adaptation. Vexian physiology is completely different from mine. Different center of gravity. Different movement patterns. I can't fight her the same way I'd fight another human. So I have to adapt. Zorith moved with serpentine grace, her lower body providing stability while her upper body struck from unexpected angles. Kyle worked with her to show how to recognize and counter unfamiliar attack patterns. Throughout the demonstration, Kyle emphasized certain principles. Environmental awareness. Using available resources. Turning disadvantages into advantages. Fighting smart instead of hard. Never giving up. When I faced the Krivoth, Kyle explained to the silent audience, I didn't think I could win by being stronger or tougher. I thought about what tools I had available. What did I know about Krivoth anatomy from class? What could I use in the classroom? How could I make the fight favor me instead of it? A student in the gallery raised a hand. Aquilin with brown fur. But you are a human. A Deathworlder. Your natural aggression and pain tolerance are significantly higher than most species. How can we apply these principles when we lack those attributes? Kyle nodded. Fair question. Yes. Humans have higher pain tolerance on average. Yes. We evolved on a world that required aggression to survive. But those aren't the most important factors. He looked around at the hundreds of students watching. The most important factor is mindset. Deciding that you refuse to be a victim. That you'll use every advantage you have, no matter how small. That you won't stop trying until the threat is neutralized, or you are. He gestured to his volunteers. Every species here has advantages. Quillen have superior vision and hearing. Torvin have natural armor and strength. Vexian have flexibility and precision. Humans have endurance and adaptability. The key is knowing your advantages and using them. Another student, this one a Vexian in the front row, called out. But what about fear? The Krivoth is designed to trigger fear responses. How did you overcome that? Kyle was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I didn't overcome it. I was terrified the entire time. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But I learned something growing up on Earth. Fear is just information. It tells you there's danger. It doesn't have to control what you do about that danger. He looked at Zorith. You were frozen in fear during the attack. That's a normal response. Your nervous system was overwhelmed. But afterward, you helped catch me when I collapsed. You acted despite the fear. That's all combat is. Acting despite the fear. Instructor Suroth stepped forward. Human Kyle makes an essential point. Combat readiness is not about eliminating fear. It is about functioning despite fear. This is trainable. The human approach to survival emphasizes this training from childhood. A new voice called out from the upper gallery. Is it true that human children play games that simulate combat? Kyle looked up, trying to locate the speaker. Yes. Tag is basically predator and prey simulation. Dodgeball teaches evasion and targeting under pressure. Contact sports like football and rugby are ritualized combat. We train for conflict even when we think we're just playing. The questions continued for another 30 minutes. Students wanted to know about Earth, about human training methods, about growing up on a death world. Kyle answered honestly. Sometimes uncomfortably aware of how alien human childhood must sound to species from safer worlds. Finally, Suroth called an end to the session. Human Kyle will be available for individual consultation during his remaining time at the Academy. For now, let us thank him for his demonstration. The applause was mixed with chittering, scale rattling, and other species-specific sounds of appreciation. Kyle nodded to the crowd, suddenly feeling awkward with so much attention. As students filed out, Director Hammond appeared from the upper gallery and made her way down to the training floor. She looked pleased. That was well done, Mr. Murphy. Educational, without being preachy. Honest about human nature, without glorifying violence. Thank you, ma'am. I've been in contact with the Galactic Educational Consortium. They're formally requesting that you develop a curriculum on Deathworlder survival principles. It would be integrated into the standard self-defense courses offered across consortium academies. Kyle blinked. I'm not qualified to develop curriculum. I'm just a student. You're a Deathworlder who survived an impossible encounter and can articulate why you succeeded. That makes you uniquely qualified. Hammond pulled up a datapad. It would be a paid position. Part-time, while you complete your exchange program. You'd work with experienced instructors to formalize what you know instinctively. Katie Bennett, who had been talking with Zorth, turned at this. Kyle, you should do it. Seriously. What you showed today was valuable. Not just for combat, but for confidence. I felt stronger just from understanding those principles. Zorth nodded agreement. Many students feel vulnerable here. We come from safe worlds, and suddenly we are surrounded by species from harsher environments. Learning that we can defend ourselves despite our limitations would be significant. Kyle considered it. This was different from Admiral Chen's offer. This wasn't about joining the military or becoming a warrior. This was about teaching others to protect themselves. About sharing knowledge that could save lives. I'll do it, he decided. On one condition. The curriculum has to emphasize de-escalation and avoidance as primary tactics. Fighting should always be the last resort. Hammond smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. Welcome to the education team, Mr. Murphy. Over the following weeks, Kyle settled into a new routine. He attended his regular classes, studied for exams like any student. But now he also spent 15 hours a week working with instructor Suroth and 2 other combat specialists to develop training materials. The work was harder than he expected. Taking instinctive knowledge and breaking it down into teachable components required him to analyze everything he did. Why did he shift his weight that way? What visual cues was he reading? How did he decide when to attack versus defend? One evening, Kyle sat in the curriculum development office with Suroth and a Quillen instructor named Professor Mira. They were reviewing footage of Kyle's encounter with the Kreveth, breaking it down frame by frame. Here, Mira said, pausing the video. You throw the chair at its leading leg. You had 3.7 seconds to make that decision. How did you know that was the correct target? Kyle studied the frozen image. I saw how it was moving. All its momentum was forward. If I hit its head or body, the chair would just bounce off. But the leg was in motion, supporting its weight. Disrupting that would break its charge. That is tactical analysis at high speed, Suroth observed. Most beings require minutes or hours to process such decisions. You did it in under 4 seconds. Because I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be good enough. Kyle looked at both instructors. That's important for the curriculum. Students need to understand that combat decisions don't have to be optimal. They just have to be better than nothing. Professor Mira made notes. The human concept of good enough under pressure is valuable. Most of our training emphasizes perfect technique, but perfect technique requires time and practice. What you describe is functional technique under extreme stress. They worked late into the evening, building the framework. Module 1 would cover awareness and assessment. Module 2 would address improvisation and resource utilization. Module 3 would focus on exploiting advantages and minimizing disadvantages. Module 4 would teach combat mindset and fear management. This will change how we approach self-defense training across the consortium, Mira said as they wrapped up. Your contribution is significant, human Kyle. Kyle felt uncomfortable with the praise. I'm just sharing what worked for me. I'm just sharing what worked for me. That is precisely why it is valuable. Mira gathered her materials. You are not offering theory or simulation. You are offering proven survival methods. There is a difference. Not. As the weeks passed, word continued to spread about the human student who had killed a Cravath. Kyle received interview requests from news networks across the galaxy. Most he declined, but Director Hammond convinced him to do one with Galactic Educational Network, emphasizing his work on the new curriculum. The interview took place in a studio equipped for multi-species broadcasting. The host was a Vexian named Thax, with brilliant blue scales and an easy manner that put guests at ease. Human Kyle Murphy, Thax began, his voice smooth for the cameras. You have become something of a phenomenon. The human who laughed at death and lived to tell about it. How does it feel to be famous? Graying. Honestly? Uncomfortable. I didn't set out to become famous. I just didn't want anyone to die that day. Yet your actions have had far-reaching effects. The Galactic Educational Consortium is implementing new self-defense protocols based on your methods. Military academies are studying your engagement with the Cravath. You've changed how the galaxy views Deathworlders. Did you anticipate any of this? Kyle shook his head. No. I thought I'd finish my exchange program quietly, go home to Earth, maybe become a xenobiologist. Instead, I'm helping write combat curriculum and doing interviews. Let me ask you something many viewers want to know. Thax leaned forward, his scales shifting to a more serious purple. Humans come from what the galaxy classifies as a Class 12 death world, one of the harshest environments that produced sapient life. Do you believe this gives humans an unfair advantage in situations like combat? I don't think advantage is the right word. Different environments produce different capabilities. Quillen have superior senses because they evolved in dense forests where that was necessary. Torvin have natural armor because their homeworld had aggressive predators. Humans have endurance and problem-solving capabilities because Earth demanded both. None of these are advantages. They're just different evolutionary paths. But surely you must acknowledge that humans are more naturally suited to violence than most species? Kyle chose his words carefully. Humans are suited to survival in high-pressure situations. Sometimes that means violence, but it also means cooperation, empathy, and creativity. Earth wasn't just dangerous. It was also beautiful and provided opportunities for those who could adapt. That taught us to be flexible, to try different approaches. Yes, we can fight, but we can also negotiate, build, create, and heal. Thax seemed pleased with that answer. You're currently working on curriculum to teach other species what you call survival principles. Can you explain what makes these principles different from standard self-defense training? Standard training focuses on techniques, how to block, strike, move. That's important, but it assumes you have time to learn and practice those techniques. Survival principles focus on mindset and adaptation. How to assess threats quickly, use whatever resources are available, and refuse to give up, even when the situation seems hopeless. Anyone can learn these principles regardless of physical capability or species. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Thax asked about Earth, about human culture, about Kyle's plans after completing his exchange program. Kyle answered honestly, aware that millions across the galaxy might be watching. When it was over, Thax thanked him warmly. You're a natural communicator, human Kyle. You should consider a career in diplomacy. Kyle laughed. I've had enough attention for one lifetime, thanks. But the attention didn't stop. The interview reached an estimated 2 billion viewers across consortium space. Messages flooded Kyle's Academy account. Some praised him. Some criticized him. Some accused him of representing everything dangerous about Deathworlders. Others thanked him for showing that anyone could learn to protect themselves. One message stood out. It came from a Quillen student named Jenna, studying at a consortium academy 3 systems away. She wrote, I was attacked by a drunk Torvin last month. He was twice my size, and I froze. I couldn't move or think. Your interview helped me understand that freezing was a natural response, not a personal failure. And your principles gave me hope that next time I could respond differently. Kyle read that message 3 times. Then he saved it. When the criticism got loud, when people accused him of promoting violence or claiming human superiority, he'd remember Jenna, remember that the work mattered. The first draft of the Survival Principles curriculum was completed 2 months after the Krivoth incident. It would undergo extensive review and testing before being implemented, but the core framework was solid. Kyle felt proud of what they had built. Admiral Chen contacted him again. "I've reviewed your curriculum, Murphy. It's good work. The offer still stands to join Earth Defense Academy. But I understand if you want to stay on your current path." Kyle thought about it. "Can I ask you something, ma'am?" "Of course. Do you think humans will always be seen as dangerous, as threats?" Chen was quiet for a moment. "Some will always fear us. We represent something they don't understand. But fear can transform into respect if we show we're trustworthy, if we use our capabilities to protect rather than dominate. That's what you're doing with this curriculum. You're showing the galaxy that human strengths can benefit everyone. But what if they're right to fear us? What if we are too dangerous? Then we prove them wrong every single day through our actions. We build bridges. We teach. We defend. We show that being capable of violence doesn't mean we're defined by it." Chen smiled. "You're already doing that work, Murphy. Whether you join the military or stay in education, you're representing humanity well." After the call ended, Kyle made his decision. He would finish his exchange program at the Galactic Academy. He would complete the Survival Principles curriculum, and then he would return to Earth and join the Diplomatic Corps, specializing in human-alien relations. He would be the bridge Zorith had suggested, someone who understood both sides and could help them understand each other. But that was still 18 months away. For now, he had classes to attend and a curriculum to finalize. He had made friends among the alien students. Katie Bennett had become a regular training partner. Zorith often studied with him in the library. Even Professor Velrix had warmed to him, occasionally asking his opinion on xenobiology topics. Life at the academy had returned to a new normal. Kyle was no longer just another student, but he wasn't treated like a celebrity either. He was simply Kyle Murphy, the human exchange student who had done something remarkable and was trying to share what he learned. One evening, as Kyle worked on curriculum revisions in the library, a Quillen student approached his table. Young, probably a first year, with nervous energy in the way his 6 eyes couldn't focus on any one thing. "Excuse me. You are human Kyle, yes? Just Kyle is fine. I am Piran. I wanted to thank you for your interview, for explaining that freezing during danger is normal. I have always felt ashamed that I am not brave, like others." Kyle gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit. Let me tell you something about bravery." Piran settled hesitantly. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear," Kyle said. "It's acting despite fear. I was terrified when I faced the Krivoth. My body wanted to run or hide. But I acted anyway, because people needed help. That's all bravery is. Doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared. But you are a Deathworlder. Fear must affect you less. Actually, humans probably experience fear more intensely than most species. Our amygdala is proportionally larger. We're wired to recognize and respond to threats constantly. It's part of what helped us survive on Earth." Kyle leaned forward. "The difference isn't that we feel less fear. It's that we trained ourselves to act despite it. And that's something anyone can learn." They talked for an hour. Piran shared his concerns about being seen as weak because he came from a peaceful, low-gravity world. Kyle talked about growing up surrounded by danger and learning that preparation mattered more than fearlessness. By the end of their conversation, Piran seemed more confident. As Piran left, Zorith appeared from between the bookshelves. You have become a counselor, as well as a teacher. Just trying to help. You do more than try. You succeed. Zorith settled next to him, scales rippling with contentment. Have you made your decision about your future? Kyle nodded. I'm going to finish here, complete the curriculum, then join Earth's diplomatic corps. Someone needs to help humans and aliens understand each other better. That is wise. You have the temperament for diplomacy, despite your combat skills. Zorith's scales shifted to an amused green. Or, perhaps because of them, it is easier to negotiate when others know you are capable of protecting yourself. Kyle laughed. That's surprisingly pragmatic. Vexians are not pacifists. We simply prefer words to violence. But we understand that both have their place. She pulled out her own study materials. Now, if you are finished counseling worried students, perhaps you could help me understand human literature. We are studying Earth cultural exports, and I cannot comprehend why humans enjoy stories about their own destruction. Kyle looked at her assignment. You're reading post-apocalyptic fiction? Yes. The Road. Station 11. The Stand. Why do humans create entertainment about survival in impossible circumstances? Kyle thought about it. Because that's what we do. We face impossible circumstances, and we survive. Those stories remind us that no matter how bad things get, humans find a way forward. They're hopeful, even when they seem dark. Zorith's scales rippled thoughtfully. That is very human. To find hope in stories of destruction. That's what it means to be from a death world, Kyle said quietly. You learn that destruction isn't the end. It's just another challenge to overcome. They studied together as evening turned to night. Outside the library windows, stars wheeled through space. The galaxy continued turning, vast and indifferent to the small dramas playing out on this orbital academy. But here, in this moment, a human and a Vexian studied together. They learned from each other. They built understanding across the vast differences of their origins. And somewhere in the future, that understanding would matter. It would help when humans ventured further into galactic space. It would help when misunderstandings arose between species. It would help build the bridges that connected Deathworlders and peaceful species into something stronger than either alone. Kyle Murphy didn't know that yet. He was just a student trying to finish his assignments and help his friends. But he carried within him the same traits that had helped him defeat the Kreveth. Adaptability, persistence, refusal to give up, and the will to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Those traits had been forged in the harsh environment of Earth. They had been refined through a moment of crisis in a classroom. And now they would shape his future and the future of human-alien relations. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They survive. They adapt. They laugh at danger. And then they make the galaxy a better place for everyone. One lesson. One friendship, one bridge, at a time. 5 months after the Krevoth incident, Kyle Murphy stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Academy alongside 300 graduating students. The survival principles curriculum he helped develop had been approved and would roll out across all consortium academies starting next semester. His exchange program was officially complete. Earth waited for him, along with acceptance to the Diplomatic Corps training program. But before he left, the Academy had one final ceremony. Director Hammond stood at the podium, her voice carrying through the hall. In recognition of extraordinary courage and selfless action in defense of fellow students, the Galactic Educational Consortium awards the Star of Valor to exchange student Kyle Murphy of Earth. Applause filled the hall. Kyle walked to the stage, aware of hundreds of eyes watching, alien faces from dozens of species, all focused on him. Hammond placed the medal around his neck. It was simple, elegant. A crystalline star that caught the light. You've represented humanity well, Hammond said quietly, for his ears alone. You showed the galaxy that Deathworlders can be protectors, not just threats. That matters more than you know. Kyle nodded, unable to find words. The ceremony continued. Other awards were given. Speeches were made. But Kyle's mind drifted to the past 5 months, to the friends he'd made, to the lessons he'd learned about himself and about the vast diversity of intelligent life in the galaxy. After the ceremony, students gathered in the reception hall. Kyle found himself surrounded by well-wishers. Zorith presented him with a traditional Vexian farewell gift, a scale from her own body preserved in resin. "So, you remember that different doesn't mean dangerous," she said. Katie Bennett hugged him hard enough to make his ribs creak. "Don't be a stranger. Earth and Europa aren't that far apart. I expect regular updates on your diplomatic adventures." Professor Velrix approached with his characteristic six-eyed intensity. "Human Kyle, I must confess something. When you first joined my xenobiology class, I was concerned. Humans have a reputation. I feared you would be disruptive." His fur rippled with what might have been embarrassment. "I was wrong. You have been one of my finest students. Your perspective on predator-prey dynamics was invaluable." "Thank you, Professor. Your class taught me to see patterns I never noticed before." Instructor Suroth was next, his scales a respectful gold. "The curriculum we developed will save lives. Not just from physical threats, but from the helplessness many beings feel when confronted by danger. You have given them tools to face fear. That is a worthy legacy. I just shared what worked for me. That is what all great teachers do." Suroth clasped Kyle's shoulder with surprising gentleness. "If you ever wish to return, to teach formally, the Academy would welcome you." The reception lasted hours. Kyle talked with students he'd barely known, instructors he'd only seen in passing, staff members who wanted to thank him for inspiring others. He felt overwhelmed by the attention but also grateful. These beings had welcomed him despite coming from a world they feared. They had given him the chance to prove humans could be trusted. Finally, as the reception wound down, Kyle found himself alone in the observation lounge where he'd talked with Zorith months ago. The gas giant still turned below, its bands of color hypnotic in their eternal swirl. Saying goodbye is harder than you expected. Kyle turned to find Director Hammond standing in the doorway. "Yes, ma'am. I knew I'd miss this place, but I didn't realize how much." Hammond joined him at the window. "You changed this academy, Kyle. Before you came, Deathworlders were studied but not really understood. You made them real. You showed that the statistics and data about Earth didn't capture what it means to be human. I hope that's a good thing." "It is. Understanding breeds empathy. Empathy reduces conflict." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You'll do well in the diplomatic corps. You have the rare ability to bridge differences without compromising who you are. That's valuable. Thank you. For everything. For believing in me when things went crazy. You made it easy to believe in you." Hammond smiled. "Now go home. See your family. Rest before training starts. You've earned it." The transport ship to Earth departed the next morning. Kyle stood at the observation deck as the Academy grew smaller, a gleaming station against the backdrop of stars. Somewhere on that station, Zorith was probably studying. Katie was likely training. Professor Velrix was teaching a new batch of students about xenobiology. Life continued, but Kyle carried a piece of it with him. The friendships. The lessons. The understanding that the galaxy was both more diverse and more unified than he'd ever imagined. Different species, different worlds, different evolutionary paths, but all seeking the same basic things. Safety, knowledge, connection, purpose. The journey to Earth took 6 days through conventional space, followed by a hyperspace jump. Kyle spent the time reviewing materials for diplomatic training, exercising to maintain the fitness level he'd developed, and thinking about the future. Earth orbit looked beautiful from the approach. The blue and white sphere that held 8 billion humans, countless other species, and more diversity in a single planet than existed in some entire star systems. Home. The transport docked at Luna Station. Kyle's parents were waiting at the arrival gate. His father, still strong at 55, with the weathered look of a man who'd spent his life working the land. His mother, smaller but fierce in the way farm wives had to be. They hugged him like they'd never let go. "We watched the interviews," his mother said, tears in her eyes. "We were so scared when we heard what happened. So proud of what you did." His father gripped his shoulder. "You okay, son? Really okay?" Kyle thought about it. The physical wounds had healed. The emotional ones were still there. Faint echoes of terror and adrenaline. But he was whole. He was home. "Yeah, Dad. I'm okay." They took a shuttle to Ohio, to the farm where Kyle had grown up. Nothing had changed. The fields stretched to the horizon, golden with wheat ready for harvest. The old barn his grandfather had built still stood, weathered, but solid. The house where 4 generations of Murphys had lived, loved, and worked. That evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, Kyle's father asked the question that had probably been bothering him. "Are you sure about this diplomatic corps thing? You could come back to the farm. Take over when I retire. It's good, honest work." Kyle looked at the fields. He'd loved growing up here. Loved the physical labor, the connection to the land, the simple satisfaction of growing things. But the galaxy had shown him something else. A bigger purpose. "I need to do this, Dad. The galaxy is scared of us. Of humans. Not without reason. We come from a harsh world, and that shaped us in ways that seem dangerous to species from safer places. But we're not monsters. We're just survivors. Someone needs to help them understand that." His father nodded slowly. "Your mother said you'd say something like that. She's usually right about these things." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance over the fields, Earth's eternal summer evening, unchanged by the vast dramas playing out among the stars. Kyle felt the tension he'd been carrying for months finally ease. This was home. The Academy had taught him about the galaxy, but here, he remembered what it meant to be human. Diplomatic Corps training started 3 weeks later at the Earth Government Complex in Geneva. 43 students from various nations, selected for their combination of academic achievement, practical skills, and psychological resilience. Kyle was the only one who had attended an alien academy. That made him both a resource and a curiosity. The training was intense. Language study, cultural protocols, negotiation tactics, threat assessment, self-defense. They studied the major species of the Galactic Consortium, learned the history of human contact with alien civilizations, practiced scenarios where a single word choice could mean the difference between peace and war. Kyle excelled at the practical work. His time at the academy gave him insights the other students lacked. He understood Quillan body language, Vexian social hierarchies, Torvan honor codes. More importantly, he understood how aliens viewed humans. The fear behind their politeness. The uncertainty about human intentions. His instructor, Ambassador Patricia Okonkwo, was a veteran of first contact situations. She'd been present when humanity officially joined the Galactic Consortium 15 years ago. In her 60s, with the kind of calm authority that came from decades of high-stakes diplomacy, "Murphy," she said after a particularly intense negotiation simulation, "you have a gift for finding common ground, but you also carry certainty that can read as arrogance. The galaxy doesn't need humans to be always right. It needs us to be trustworthy partners." Kyle absorbed the feedback. How do I balance confidence with humility? By remembering that every species in the galaxy survived their own crucible. Earth was harsh, yes, but every world that produced intelligence demanded something from its inhabitants. We're not special for surviving. We're just one more successful species in a galaxy full of them. The lesson stuck. Kyle began approaching his studies with different eyes. Not as a human explaining his species to aliens, but as one survivor recognizing other survivors. The Quillan evolved in forests where predators hunted by sound, creating beings with extraordinary hearing. The Vexian developed in competitive social structures, producing master strategists. The Torvin faced resource scarcity, fostering cooperation and honor codes. Every species had its strengths. Every world had shaped its inhabitants. Understanding that helped Kyle see the bigger picture. 6 months into training, Kyle's class took a field trip to the Consortium Embassy in New York, a massive structure that housed representatives from 47 member species and served as the primary interface between Earth and the galaxy. Ambassador Okonkwo led them through the halls, pointing out features designed to accommodate different biology, climate-controlled zones for temperature-sensitive species, specialized gravity rooms, air filtration to handle varying atmospheric needs. The building itself was a testament to the cooperation required to make galactic civilization work. In the main conference hall, they observed an actual negotiation session. Earth was requesting expanded trading rights in the Kepler sector. The Quillen representative raised concerns about human expansion. The Torvin delegate suggested compromise. A Vexian mediator worked to find middle ground. Kyle watched how the human ambassador handled objections. She acknowledged concerns without becoming defensive. She provided data without being condescending. She built consensus through patient dialogue. It was a masterclass in diplomatic technique. After the session, the human ambassador, Director James Park, met with Kyle's class. He'd heard about Kyle's academy experience. "Mr. Murphy, I've read the survival principles curriculum you helped develop. Impressive work. How did your time at the academy shape your view of humanity's role in the galaxy?" Kyle thought carefully. The entire class was watching. "It taught me that we're not as unique as we think. Every species has its strengths and weaknesses. Our job isn't to prove we're strong or safe or trustworthy. It's to be strong and safe and trustworthy. To let our actions speak louder than our words." Director Park smiled. "That's a mature perspective. We need more young diplomats who understand that." He addressed the class. "Human-alien relations are at a critical juncture. We've been part of the consortium for 15 years, but we're still the new species. The dangerous species from the death world. Every interaction shapes how we're perceived. Your generation will determine whether humans become valued partners or feared outsiders." The weight of that responsibility settled on Kyle's shoulders. This wasn't just about his career. It was about humanity's future in a galactic community that didn't fully trust them yet. Training continued through the year. Kyle studied harder than ever. He practiced negotiations until his classmates groaned at his perfectionism. He learned 6 alien languages with varying degrees of fluency. He read every first contact report, every diplomatic incident analysis, every cultural study. But he also learned to relax, to build friendships with his fellow students, to remember that diplomacy happened between people, not just governments. His classmates came from every corner of Earth. Different cultures, different backgrounds, different perspectives on humanity's place in the galaxy. Maria Santos from Brazil believed humans should be cautious, respectful, earning trust slowly. Chen Wei from China thought humans needed to demonstrate strength to be taken seriously. Jamal Hassan from Kenya argued that shared scientific endeavor was the best bridge between species. Astrid Larsen from Norway emphasized environmental cooperation as common ground. Kyle learned from all of them. Learned that even among humans, there was no single approach to galactic relations. The diversity of human thought was itself a strength, offering multiple paths to understanding with alien species. The final exam was a complex simulation. Each student played a human diplomat facing a crisis. Kyle's scenario involved a human colony ship that had accidentally violated Quillen territory. The Quillen were angry. Then, the Quillen. Then, the colonists were defensive. Tensions were escalating toward potential conflict. Kyle approached it carefully. He acknowledged Quillen concerns without making excuses. He proposed joint investigation to determine exactly what happened. He suggested the human colony could offer technological assistance to the nearest Quillen settlement as a gesture of goodwill. Most importantly, He listened to what the Quillen representative was really saying beneath the anger. They felt disrespected. They worried about human expansion threatening their territory. By the end of the simulation, Kyle had diffused the immediate crisis and established framework for ongoing dialogue. Ambassador Okonkwo gave him the highest marks in the class. That was textbook diplomacy, she said during his evaluation. You remained calm under pressure. You acknowledged legitimate grievances. You proposed practical solutions. And you built relationship rather than just resolving the immediate problem. Well done. Kyle graduated from diplomatic training ranked second in his class. Not first, which went to Maria Santos for her exceptional cultural insight, but high enough to have his choice of assignments. The posting he wanted was at the Galactic Academy as Earth's official diplomatic liaison. It would put him back where he'd spent the most formative year of his life, working with students and faculty to improve human-alien relations at the educational level. Director Hammond approved the posting immediately. Having you return as a diplomat is perfect. You know the academy, you understand the students, and you've already built credibility here. Welcome back, Kyle. Or should I say, Liaison Murphy. Kyle laughed. Kyle is still fine. The transport back to the academy felt like coming full circle. 10 months ago, he'd left as a student. Now he returned as a representative of Earth. The difference was significant, but also strange. He was only 24, younger than many students at the academy. Yet he carried the authority and responsibility of his position. The academy had changed in subtle ways. New students from species Kyle didn't recognize. Updated technology in the classrooms. But the essential character remained. A place where beings from across the galaxy came to learn. Kyle's office was in the diplomatic wing. A suite designed to accommodate visitors from various species. He had a Quillen-style meditation corner, a Vexian-appropriate temperature control system, and a Torvan height desk. The galaxy in miniature. His first official act was meeting with the current student council. 20 representatives from different species, elected by their peers, to voice student concerns. Kyle had served on this council during his exchange year. The council president was a Torvan named Krelix. Tall, armored, respectful in the way his species valued. Liaison Murphy, we welcome your appointment. Many students remember your actions against the Kreveth and your work on the survival curriculum. Thank you, President Krelix. I hope to serve the Academy community well. We have concerns we wish to discuss, Krelix continued. Some students remain uneasy about human presence at the Academy. They fear that Deathworlders, even diplomatic ones, represent potential danger. Kyle had expected this. I understand those concerns. What would help address them? A Quillen representative named Tira spoke up. Transparency. Many students don't understand what Earth is truly like beyond the statistics. They know it's a Class 12 death world, but they don't understand what that means in practical terms. So you want more education about Earth and humans? Yes, Tira said. And not just academic information. Personal stories. Cultural exchange. Help us see humans as people, not just data points about a dangerous species. Kyle nodded. This, he could do. I'll organize a cultural exchange program. Earth students can share their experiences, and alien students can ask questions. We'll also create educational materials about Earth's diversity. Not every part of Earth is equally harsh, and not all humans have the same relationship with their environment. The council seemed pleased with this response. They discussed other issues, concerns about curriculum requirements, requests for improved facilities, questions about recent consortium policy changes. Kyle took notes, offered input where appropriate, and promised to investigate issues beyond his immediate knowledge. After the meeting, he walked through the academy corridors. Students hurried between classes. Some recognized him and nodded respectfully. Others stared with curiosity. A few avoided eye contact, still uncertain about humans. Kyle understood. Trust took time. His job was to facilitate that trust, one interaction at a time. He found instructor Suroth in Training Hall 7, teaching a combat class. The students were working through scenarios from the Survival Principles curriculum. Kyle watched from the observation gallery, pleased to see his work being implemented. When the class ended, Suroth joined him. Liaison Murphy, or should I address you more formally now? Kyle is fine. I'm still the same person, but with different responsibilities. Suroth's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. The curriculum is proving effective. Students report greater confidence in their ability to handle threats. More importantly, they report reduced anxiety about potential dangers. Knowledge truly does counter fear. That was always the goal. They talked about possible curriculum expansions, advanced modules for students interested in security work, simplified versions for younger students, specialized training for different species' unique physiology. You built something lasting, Suroth said. Not many beings can claim that. Kyle felt pride at that assessment. The Krevoth attack had been terrifying and traumatic. But the good that came from it, the curriculum that would help countless students, made the experience meaningful. Over the following months, Kyle settled into his role. He organized cultural exchange events where human students shared experiences about Earth. He mediated disputes between students from different species. He advised the administration on human perspectives in policy decisions. He represented Earth's interests in academy governance, but mostly, he listened. To students worried about their future, to instructors concerned about curriculum changes, to staff members managing the complex logistics of a multi-species institution. Kyle discovered that diplomacy wasn't about grand gestures or brilliant strategies. It was about paying attention, understanding perspectives, and helping people find common ground. Zoreth visited his office regularly. She was working on her thesis about cross-cultural communication strategies. Kyle often served as a test subject for her research, answering questions about human communication patterns. You use humor differently than most species, she observed during one session. Humans joke about serious topics, about death, danger, failure. This confuses many beings. Failure, humor is how we cope with stress. If we can laugh about something, it has less power over us. That is very human. Zoreth's scales rippled with amusement. To laugh at powerlessness until you regain power. Katie Bennett also remained at the academy, having been hired as an assistant instructor for physics. She and Kyle had lunch together weekly, comparing notes on academy life from staff perspective versus student perspective. Do you ever miss just being a student? Katie asked one day. Before the Krevoth? Before all the attention? Kyle considered it. Sometimes. It was simpler. But I think this is where I'm supposed to be. Using what happened to help others. That gives it meaning. I wide, 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 wide. Very philosophical for a farm kid from Ohio. Farm kids have plenty of time to think. Long days in the fields, nothing but you and your thoughts. They laugh together. Two humans far from Earth but not entirely separate from their origins. They carried their home world with them in everything they did. The cultural exchange program Kyle organized grew into something larger than he'd anticipated. Students wanted to share their own worlds, not just learn about Earth. Soon the program featured presentations from dozens of species. Quillen shared their forest civilization. Vexian explained their complex social hierarchies. Torvin discussed their honor codes and resource-sharing traditions. The academy became more integrated, more understanding, more unified. Not because differences disappeared, but because beings learned to appreciate those differences as strengths rather than threats. One evening, as Kyle reviewed reports in his office, Director Hammond stopped by. I wanted you to see this. She pulled up a graph showing incident reports at consortium academies. The line showed a clear downward trend. Since implementation of the survival curriculum, Violent incidents have decreased by 37%, but more interestingly, fear-based anxiety reports have dropped by 62%. Students feel safer because they know they can protect themselves if needed. That's significant. It's remarkable. You gave beings from safe worlds the tools to handle an unsafe galaxy. That's changed lives, Kyle. Hammond smiled. Earth should be proud of you. I certainly am. After she left, Kyle sat alone with that information. 37% fewer violent incidents. 62% less anxiety. Numbers that represented real students. Real lives improved. The Kravoth attack had been traumatic, but this made it worthwhile. His communicator chimed. A message from his father back on Earth. A video showing the autumn harvest. Golden fields stretching to the horizon. His father's weathered face appeared on screen. Hey, son. Hope things are going well up there in space. Farm's doing great. Your mother wants to know when you're visiting next. We miss you. But we're proud of what you're doing. Keep making us proud. Kyle smiled. The message was simple, brief, but it reminded him of who he was beneath the diplomat's title. A farm kid who'd learned that sometimes you had to fight to protect what mattered, who'd taken that lesson to the stars and shared it with beings who needed it. He composed a response. Told his parents about the cultural exchange program, about the decrease in incidents, about feeling like he was making a difference. He ended with a promise to visit during the winter break. Outside his office window, stars wheeled through space. The galaxy turned. Indifferent. And eternal. But here, on this station orbiting a gas giant in the Kepler system, beings from different worlds worked to understand each other, to build something better than fear and mistrust. Kyle Murphy, the human Deathworlder who had laughed at a killer and survived, was part of that building, not through violence or conquest, but through patience, understanding, and the willingness to bridge the vast distances between species. Because that's what humans did best. They survived against the odds. They adapted to impossible circumstances. They faced fear with humor and determination. And when given the chance, they helped others do the same. The work would continue. More challenges would come. But Kyle was ready. He had learned from Earth's harshness, from the Kravoth's attack, from months of training and years of experience. He had learned that being from a death world didn't make him dangerous. It made him capable, resilient, strong enough to protect others while building understanding across the cosmos. And that made all the difference.